When Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the international community on February 24, 2024, his message was blunt: the world must reckon with those who profit from war. His accusation was not merely rhetorical. It was a challenge to confront the uncomfortable economic machinery humming beneath the surface of the Russian invasion. Despite being subjected to the harshest sanctions regime in modern history, with over 28,500 individual restrictions levied against Russian banks, corporations and officials, Russia has not buckled. Instead, it has adapted. Key to this adaptation is its pivot to the east, especially toward India, a country that has maintained diplomatic neutrality while deepening economic ties with Moscow. Russia's economic survival hinges on two core exports: energy and arms. Together, they represent the lifeblood of the Kremlin's wartime economy. Fossil fuels alone account for roughly half of Russia's foreign currency earnings. Even as oil tankers face scrutiny and gas pipelines are sanctioned, Moscow has found new ways to keep the money flowing. According to TASS, Russia's defense budget in 2025 surged to $145 billion, up 30% from the previous year. That increase wasn't funded by tax hikes or spending cuts. It was underwritten by international customers, particularly in Asia. Foremost among them, India. India has long been one of the world's top arms importers and Russia's most consistent military client. The legacy of Soviet-era cooperation has left the Indian military heavily reliant on Russian equipment. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute (SIPRI), 97% of India's main battle tanks are Russian-made. This dependency has turned India into a cornerstone of Russia's arms export strategy, one that Moscow has aggressively monetized. In 2024, amid mounting pressures from the Ukraine war, Russia raised the price of its Su-30 MKI fighter jets by 60%, from $25 million to $40 million each. India still signed a $2 billion deal to purchase 50 of them. It wasn't out of generosity but necessity. With rising tensions along its borders with Pakistan and China, India had little room to maneuver. National security took precedence over price. Yet analysts in New Delhi were not blind to the implications. "They took advantage of us," said one Indian defense analyst, pointing out that wartime constraints allowed Russia to cash in on India's strategic urgency. In 2023, Russia also exported $1.5 billion worth of T-90 tanks to India. Indian Army Chief General Manoj Pandey defended the purchase, insisting that performance and compatibility outweighed cost concerns. But the public justification could not mask the reality. India was paying more for the same hardware, and Russia was using the war as leverage. While the arms trade has long defined India-Russia relations, the Ukraine conflict added a new, and immensely profitable, dimension: energy. When Europe imposed sanctions on Russian oil and gas, it triggered an urgent scramble for alternative supplies. Energy self-sufficiency in the EU was just 45% in 2023, making it highly vulnerable to any supply disruption. Sensing an opportunity, India inserted itself as a neutral broker. As one of the world's largest energy importers, India began purchasing heavily discounted Russian oil, refining it domestically, and then reselling it to European markets, at a premium. In 2023, India imported 150 million barrels of crude from Russia, triple the volume from the year before. Half of that ended up in Europe. One deal between Indian Oil Corporation and Russian state-owned Rosneft saw India acquire 100 million barrels at 90% of the global price. Reselling just half of that stock yielded an estimated $2 billion in net profit. India's Energy Minister Hardeep Singh Puri touted the arrangement as a strategic win. "We not only secured our national energy interests but also helped stabilize Europe's market," he said in a televised interview. What went unspoken: the arrangement also helped Russia quietly bypass sanctions and continue funding its war. By 2024, Moscow had formalized its oil relationship with New Delhi, signing a long-term deal to supply 20 million barrels annually. In a rare public comment, Indian energy tycoon Mukesh Ambani said the deal had not only stabilized prices but benefited Indian industry immensely. At first glance, the India-Russia partnership appears symbiotic. India gets cheaper oil and military hardware, Russia gets a vital revenue stream. But such interdependence may prove more fragile than it seems. India's support is not ideological, it is transactional. The moment Western incentives outweigh those offered by Moscow, the relationship could pivot. Indian firms are increasingly aligning with Western supply chains, and any future U.S.-India defense cooperation, particularly through Quad or other regional alliances, could alter New Delhi's calculus. The implications for Russia are profound. If India were to distance itself, Moscow's war economy could unravel rapidly. Analysts in both countries have quietly acknowledged the danger. Russia has invested heavily in building energy infrastructure inside India. Rosneft alone has spent over $5 billion setting up refineries and gas stations, accounting for 20% of its total overseas investment. These projects were designed to secure long-term market access. But they also reveal how reliant Russia has become on a single economic partner. Despite deep trade ties, Russia's ability to penetrate India's broader economy has been limited. Russian civilian industries have struggled to gain traction in the Indian market. In 2023, Russian automakers exited the country, unable to compete with domestic brands like Tata or Mahindra. "Our cars couldn't sell," said Andrei Ivanov, a Russian auto executive. "The competition was just too fierce." Similar setbacks have plagued the electronics sector. Russian brands like Rostec couldn't match the quality or pricing of Chinese and Indian firms. "We simply can't compete," admitted Deputy Minister Oleg from Russia's Ministry of Electronics. "Our tech is outdated, our production is expensive, and the market has moved on." This reveals a critical limitation. Russia's trade with India is almost entirely dependent on two sectors, defense and energy. In the absence of broader commercial engagement, the relationship remains narrow and vulnerable. History offers a sobering parallel. In the 1980s, when the United States imposed grain and oil restrictions on the Soviet Union, the resulting economic shocks contributed to the USSR's collapse. Russia today risks repeating that pattern, swapping one dependency, Europe, for another, India. The short-term cash flow may sustain the Kremlin's war aims, but it also locks Moscow into a risky economic model. Should global alliances shift, or should India rethink its neutrality, Russia could face financial freefall. As Zelensky warned, the world must take a closer look at those who profit from war. Not because profit itself is evil, but because it can prolong conflicts that might otherwise end. India, by providing Moscow with both cash and a commercial lifeline, has become one of the most consequential enablers of the Russia-Ukraine war, if not by design then by outcome. In the global theater of war, weapons and oil are no longer just tools of conflict. They are commodities traded in the margins of diplomacy. Russia's ability to fund its invasion of Ukraine has not come solely from within, but from shrewd partnerships and economic loopholes, with India playing an unexpectedly central role. While New Delhi insists its actions serve national interest, the profits flowing through oil tankers and arms deals speak volumes. This war is not only fought with missiles, it's sustained by markets. And as long as buyers keep showing up, the seller has every reason to keep the war machine running. The question now isn't just how to stop the fighting, but whether the international community is willing to confront the quieter forces that allow it to continue. In this war economy, neutrality has a price, and someone somewhere is always paying it.